bookish friends, I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. It is time for another video and I am here to do my January wrap up. First wrap up of the year. I think I had a good start to the year. I had fun with my reading, which is the whole point, right? I really kind of want that to be my focus for this year. I want to read books that I want to read, books that I'm enjoying. I don't want to force myself through books. I don't want to slog through books. I don't want to get myself into any reading slumps this year, if possible. And I just want to have a good time because I love reading. I've always loved reading and I want to continue to love reading. I don't want it to feel like I don't want it to feel like a chore. And I think that's something that I think it can happen quite easily when you're trying to make it part of like a sole focus for social media, or, you know, like having this channel. I am not consistent with this channel, but I do it because I love doing it. I love talking about the books and I love reading the books. And that's what I want to focus on, and that's what I want to come across in my videos, which is sometimes probably why you don't have as much content from me as I probably would love to do. But also, I mean, I also work full time and I'm a mum and I'm a wife. So, you know, life is life in sometimes. But that aside, don't know why I just went on that little tangent, but I just felt like I had to, or I wanted to. Let's get into the books that I read for the month of January. Okie dokie. I'm going to give you, making an absolute mess. I'm going to give you a few little stats first. The only thing I didn't work out was what genres, how many of each genre, should I say, that I read this month. That's the only thing I forgot to do, but I'll try and do that next time. So the books I read in January, there was a total of 14 books. Split that down. We had 6 audiobooks, 2 ebooks, 6 physical books. But then we also had 4 DNFs. So technically I started 18 books in the month, but 4 of those I did DNF. So before I speak about, I think I'll do the DNFs first, but before I get into those, just a quick recap. The picks that I did from my TBR jar, we had Throne of Secrets by Kerry Maniscalco, Betting on You by Lynn Painter, Step on a Crack, James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge, Love at First Night by Megan Clawson, The Fake Out by Stephanie Archer, Suspicious Minds by Gwenda Bond, The Mansfield Park Murder by Lynn Shepherd, and The Jigsaw Man by Nadine Matheson. Those were the 8 picks that I did from my jar. And then the extra picks that I decided to put in for the month, because I was kind of already working on 3 of them when I started the month off. And the other one I just kind of wanted to add in because I was in the mood for it. So we had Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, Spectacular by Stephanie Garber, One Day at Horrorland by R.L. Stein, and A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver. So those were all the books. Sorry, that was very rapid fire, but those were all the books that I picked and I wanted to get to in the month of January. Now, I got to all of my extra picks. And from my 8 TBR picks, we ended up getting to 4 of them. One was the DNF. 2 I read in the month of January. The fourth one I started, but I didn't end up finishing it until the first few days of Feb. So that's going into February's wrap up. That's not going to be included here. So let's start with the DNF. The first DNF that I had was from my TBR picks. And that was The Mansfield Park Murder by Lynn Shepherd. This was also on these books are going to self-destruct within a year. And then I put it on my 2025 TBR so that I could try and encourage myself to get to it. And and then it ended up on my January TBR. This was a DNF. I think I only read, I don't even know, probably about 30 pages. And I was just really bored. It's obviously old style English. And I just couldn't do it. I was just like, no, I'm bored. I'm not having a good time. I don't want to slog through this. I know it wasn't too long, but I just didn't care. So that was my first DNF of the year. Then I tried to read, as part of a buddy read, Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And this was also on my 2025 TBR. I can't remember how much I read of this. About 60 odd pages I think I read of this in the end. And guys, I had to DNF it. I know how many people rave about this book and they love this book. And I think I could see why. But it just felt like there was nothing happening. And I didn't care enough about the characters to want to continue reading. I just didn't. And I didn't want to put myself in a slump. I'm not going to pick this back up. This is not a soft DNF. This is a full-on DNF for me. I'm not going to waste my time trying to like something just because it is hyped up so much or it is beloved by so many other people. It's just not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea, so we're going to move on. That was the second one that I DNF'd. The third book that I DNF'd was also part of my self-destruct books, and that is Slaughterhouse Farm by T. Orr Monroe. Now, this was actually, it turns out this is the second in an interconnected series. I don't think it really matters. I think you can technically read them as standalones. The character was fine. The plot was fine. But again, I was just bored. I think I did read a fair bit of this. I read over 100 pages of this one. And I was just bored. And I did not care where the mystery was going. Like, I didn't need to know. It didn't have me gripped. It didn't have me like, oh my God, I need to finish this. I need to know what happened. And no, I just couldn't get behind it. So I DNF'd it. And then the last DNF that I had of the month of Jan was Experimental Magic by Iris Beaglehole. I think that's her name. This is book 2 in the series. I think there's like 9 books out. These are all on Kindle Unlimited. I enjoyed the first one. I think I gave it like a 3.5. Yeah, it was okay. And the second one, again, I think I read about 40% of that ebook. And it's cozy. It's very, I can't remember how she described it. It's like Charmed meets Gilmore Girls, kind of. That is small town. It's like, some great side characters. But I just did not care about these characters. I did not care. We follow a mum and her teenage daughter, and they've just kind of moved back to the town. Her grandmother has just passed away. She's inherited all this stuff that her grandmother left her. But she is a witch. And we're kind of following their journey. And things are happening. There's kind of like mystery elements to it as well. But nothing is really high stakes. And I just could not. I was like, I could continue reading the other 60% of this book. It would probably end up being like a 3 stars, maybe a 3.5 again. But do I really want to do this for 8 more books? That's more, I think, where I was coming from when I decided to DNF this. do I want to make my way through, finish this and then read another 7 books? Is that really what I want? And the answer was no. So I'm not going to waste my time, and I DNF'd it. So those are my 4 DNFs of the month. Let's now do, so the 2 ebooks that I read were A Photo Finish by Elsie Silver. That was the first one. I decided I was just craving something by Elsie Silver. I had finished the Chestnut Spring series, I think it was in December of 2024. And I was just craving more of her writing. I didn't want to start her Wild Love series yet. Because I had already read, what's the first one? I can't think what the first one is in this in this little series. Anyway, I read the first one last year as well, really enjoyed that, so I decided to pick up A Photo Finish. And in this one we are following Violet Eaton, who is the sister of the Eaton brothers from the Chestnut Springs. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I enjoyed it slightly more than the first one, where we followed Billy and Vaughn. In this one, the male main character is Vaughn's brother Cole. And he is very grumpy, you know, keeps to himself. But the whole premise of it and the fact that they knew each other, but they, you know, I don't know, they had this bond, but they'd never actually met in person. And then, you know, they're kind of thrown together and it's that false proximity. You've got that Elsie Silver banter, and I just really had a good time. I just really enjoyed it. So yeah, I gave it 4.5 stars. I've got 2 more left in this series and I'm excited to get through them and get them done. But yeah, I would highly recommend this series as well if you've already read the Chestnut Springs, or if you haven't read anything from Elsie Silver, I would maybe say start with this series, and then this is the Gold Rush Ranch series, and yeah, start from there and then move on to Chestnut Springs. But I just love Elsie's writing and I always have such a good time. And then the second ebook that I read for the month of Jan was An Enchanted Moment on Ever After Street by Jamie Admonds. Now, this is book 2 in the Ever After Street series. I read the first one last January 2024. And I absolutely loved it and I gave that 5 stars. But for some reason, I just didn't then pick up the rest of the series. I just started, you know, reading everything else and starting a million other series. But we are focusing on series this year, so I was like, yep, I'm going to pick this up. It felt like a good time. They are just so heartwarming, her stories, and that's what I wanted. That's what I needed in that moment. And they are kind of loosely based off of classic fairy tales. Ever After Street is literally a fairy tale street where all of the shops and stuff are based off of fairy tales. In the first one, we followed our female main character she worked in like the dress shop that was kind of like supposed to be like Cinderella's dress shop kind of thing. And now this one was set in the bookshop, and it was kind of like, it's Grumpy Sunshine, it was Beauty and the Beast, a kind of reimagining, if you will. And we saw some of the older characters coming back from the first one, and it's just the community, the vibes, and I just love everything about it. Beauty and the Beast is my all-time favourite fairy tale, and this one was done really lovely. I had such a good time. I cried and I gave it 5 stars. Please go and read anything written by Jamie Admonds. I've only read 3 of her books so far, but I'm so excited to read more, and I would highly recommend. So yeah, those are the ebooks. Now let's go through the audiobooks that I got through in January. So the first audiobook that I did was, it wasn't this one actually, it was We Begin at the End by Chris Whittaker. This was my first experience of Chris Whittaker, and I had a good time. It was like nothing I've read before, and it was just it was refreshing is what it was, and I just loved the characters in it, you know, the whole kind of, the way everything kind of interconnected and came back around, and just, it just felt like real people, and he did it so beautifully. And Duchess was my favourite character. She was just phenomenal. She was this feisty young girl that, you know, had been dealt a really shit hand from life and was just doing her best to get through it. And yeah, I had a good time. I gave that one 4 stars, and I am really intrigued to delve into more of this author's writing. I'm already on to my next Chris Whittaker book, which again I'm listening to on audio, and I'm hoping that one's going to be just as good. Then the next one that I did, I have the physical copy here, but I did audiobook it. That was Enemies to Lovers by Amelia Jones, and this is like a Pride and Prejudice retelling, but we follow Eden Blake, and she is the understudy in a musical production of Pride and Prejudice, and she ends up having to take the lead. It's called Liz and Darcy. I think the musical is called Liz and Darcy. She ends up having to take the lead, and she ends up working alongside Brennan Thorne, who is like this theatre god, you know, like she's never worked in theatre before. I think she's done like little bits and pieces, but mostly she's done like commercials and stuff like that, and he's kind of, they just hit it off on the wrong foot straight away. And then we just follow their journey. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. I liked the whole kind of theatre aspect, like, you know, behind the scenes, the actor vibe from it. But there was so much miscommunication, and there was obviously so much pride and so much prejudice. But it was okay. It was sweet. It was funny in places. And was it amazing? No. But I had a good time, and I gave it 3 stars. Then the next audiobook, I forgot what I was doing then. The next audiobook that I listened to was Shadow of Night by Deborah Harkness. Now, last year, towards the end of last year, I wanted to do a reread of the All Souls trilogy, Discovery of Witches, Shadow of Night, Book of Life. But I wanted to audiobook them this time, because obviously I've read them physically, and I just wanted I wanted that immersive experience. I wanted to see what the audiobooks were like. And I did the first one, and then couldn't get a hold of them on my BorrowBox app. Someone else had borrowed them, which was kind of rude, guys. I was trying to get it all done before the end of the year. But anyway, so that did become available, and I jumped at the chance to listen to this one, and I absolutely loved it. This is obviously a reread, or a first time listen, but a reread. I love this world. I love these characters. I think Deborah Harkness does something beautiful with the way she gets history across, and the way she incorporates history into this, you know, into our modern world, basically. I just love it. And I had a good time, and it was 5 stars. Then I obviously went on to, spitting everywhere. I then went on to the Book of Life, which is the final book in the All Souls trilogy. Sorry, I'm lying, it's not a trilogy anymore. There's actually 5 books out now. It's the final book in that original trilogy. And again, same thing. I love these characters. Obviously, I can't tell you much of what it's about because it's the second and third book in a series. But if you are not familiar with the Discovery of Witches, I would highly, highly recommend. We follow Diana Bishop, who is she works as a lecturer, kind of historian. She specializes in alchemy, and old kind of scientific texts and stuff like that. She is also a witch, but she does not like to use her powers. She does not like the fact she is a witch, and she tries to avoid magic at all costs. And she meets Matthew de Clermont, who is a centuries-old vampire. And we follow their journey, their story, and the whole book centres around witches, vampires, and demons. And it's just phenomenal. And I would highly recommend. So I did my first time listen, gave that one 5 stars as well. Absolutely loved it. Then went back and rewatched the 3 seasons as well that are on Amazon Prime because I really enjoyed them too. Then I listened to The Wilds by Sarah Pearce. This is part of the Ellen Warner series. This is book 3. I heard somewhere that I think this is the final book. I don't know how true that is. But if it is, it is. I mean, okay, fine. I've had a good time with all of these books. I read the first one on ebook, and then I listened to the second one, The Retreat, and then I obviously did this one as an audiobook as well. I like our main character. This one was set in Portugal, in like the national park, in the middle of nowhere, and it was a little slow to begin with, a little slow to get into. But then the twists and turns just started coming, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I love about Sarah Pearce's storytelling. And I had a good time, and I gave it 4 stars. And I would recommend the series as a whole. And then the final audiobook that I listened to was Things We Do for Love by Miranda Dickinson. I really like Miranda Dickinson's writing. Everything I've read from her, I have given 4 or 4.5 stars. They are always heartwarming. They are frustrating because there is always so much miscommunication. And that's why, for me, they don't quite make it to that 5-star mark. But I always have a good time. This one, again, kind of similar to Enemies to Lovers in that sense. We're following actors. But this one is all centered around Shakespeare and his works, and I just had a good time. Loved all of the characters, loved the whole kind of, it was split into acts, and I just really enjoyed that. I loved all the Shakespeare side of it, and I had a good time. And I gave that one, what did I give that one? I gave that one 4 stars as well. I think I've only got a few of Miranda Dickinson's backlist to get through now, and then I'm all caught up, and I really enjoy her writing. I would highly recommend. So finally, we have the physical books that I read for January. So the first one that I read for the month was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book to Divine Rivals, and I obviously I'd heard, and I've seen a lot of people review this, and they seemed quite disappointed, because I think we weren't as focused on the romance in this book. We were more focused on the war and the kind of political stuff that was happening, and the gods and the fantasy side of it. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I just think her writing is stunning, and I love Iris and Roman so much. And I gave it 5 stars. I couldn't not, because it was just so well done, and it was such a great wrap up to this little duology. And if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. So that brings our total 5 stars for the month of January to 5. I had 5 5-star reads. Oh, actually, no, sorry. One of them is down here. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got one more to show you, but I had 5 in total. Then the next physical book that I read was One Day at Horrorland by R.L. Stine. I'll put it here. It's in my daughter's room. I've already given it back to her. It is my daughter's, and I can't bother to go and get it. But I enjoyed that one. I gave it 3 stars. I was kind of doing towards the end of the year. I read a couple of his Fear Street stories. And I wanted to I was trying to hit 200 books. It didn't happen. But my daughter came in and was like, why don't you read some of my Goosebumps books? They're nice and short, and you love the Goosebumps. And I hadn't read them since I was like her age. So I was like, or probably younger. So I was like, yeah, do you know what? Why not? So I read a couple of those, and this one I'd started in late December, like the last few days of December, but I just finished it in January. So I read that one, gave that one 3 stars. That was fun. Then I treated myself to this beautiful copy of Spectacular by Stephanie Garber, which is the next little instalment in the Caraval series. It is obviously a very short book. Let's just show you. That's the gorgeous little front of it. I bought this and I just decided to read it straight away. I didn't want it to sit on my shelves. Again, I gave this one 3 stars. I had a good time. It wasn't amazing. Obviously, it wasn't very long either. I liked being back with the characters and back in the world. And I love Stephanie Garber's writing. There was just an element in here that I didn't quite like, and it made me feel a little uncomfortable. It was fine in the end, but just for a split second I was like, what? Wait a minute. I had a few doubts, but no, it was fine. But yeah, it was good. It was 3 stars. It was nice. Didn't blow me away, but I am looking forward to her book that's coming out this year, Secrets of Alchemy, I think it's called. But yeah, so that was the next one that we did. Then I started this as a buddy read. I wasn't planning, this wasn't in my sort of plans at all for the month. Obviously, my aim for January is for 2025 is to finish as many series as possible and not start new ones. But I ended up agreeing to read this as part of a buddy read. And it's Icebreaker by Hannah Grace. And I am glad I picked it up. It was perfect kind of for the weather, those wintry kind of vibes. I had a good time. We follow Anastasia and Nathan. That is his name, right? Yeah, Nate. Call him Nate Hawkins. We follow them too. He is a hockey player, he's the captain of the hockey team. She is an ice figure skater. Something happens. They end up having to share a rink. They don't hit it off very well to begin with, but then he ends up growing on her. And this was cute. This was spicy. If spice is not your thing, then I wouldn't pick this up. There are a fair few spice scenes throughout this book, to be honest. Maybe even half of it. I didn't count them. But I had a good time. I don't mind spice or a bit of smut, whatever you want to call it. I don't mind it. So it was okay. I gave this one 4 stars. I absolutely love Henry. Henry is one of the hockey team players. and I cannot wait to get to Henry's book. Then I did another reread. So out of my 5 stars, 3 of them were rereads and 2 of them were new 5 stars. But this is the final one. It's Step on a Crack by James Patterson and Michael Ledwidge. Now, this is book 1 in the Michael Bennett series, but it's a reread. That's why I didn't mind doing this, because I originally read the first 4 in this series, and then I've continued to collect the books and just not read them. So this is one of the ones we're focusing on this year, and I wanted to see if it was still going to be a 5 stars, because like I said, I read this many years ago now, and we all know that I am a James Patterson stan. He is one of my all-time favourite authors, but I wanted to see if it held up, and it did. 5 stars, absolutely love this, and we follow Detective Michael Bennett. He is a homicide detective in New York City, and he has 10 children, all different ages. They are all adopted. And I'm so excited to get back into this series. That's all I'm going to say. This was fast-paced. It was just everything that I want in a James Patterson book. So, highly recommend. And then the final physical book that I read for the month of January, which was part of my TBR picks, is Suspicious Minds by Gwenda Bond, which is a Stranger Things novel. And this is all about Eleven's mum. If you will know, if you've seen Stranger Things, then you know. If you haven't, 11 is one of the main characters from the series. And this goes back in time, and we follow 11's mum, how she met Dr. Brenner, how she ended up in the lab, and everything that unfolded from there. This was not too long. I had a good time. I love anything Stranger Things. Obsessed with the series. Cannot wait for season 5 to come out. I went to see the first Shadow with my daughter back in October, and it was phenomenal. It is one of the best things I've seen on stage in such a long time. Absolutely fantastic. If you can go and see it, please do. So this was really interesting, because that is kind of what happens in Hawkins, Indiana, and how it's about all of the kids and like their parents. They were in high school, they're kind of that age, and so it's kind of how, and it's very focused on Henry, and I loved that, and kind of how everything came about. So that's kind of like a prequel. And then we have this one, and this one is, I'm presuming it's kind of set in between, so where that one is, and then this comes somewhere in between the season. Such a cool bunch of characters in here. Dr. Brenner is classic Dr. Brenner, and I had a good time, and 4 stars, and I would recommend it. So that is all of the books that I got to in the month of Jan. I've been yapping for a long time. I need to wrap it up quick. So the only books we didn't get to from my TBR was Throne of Secrets, Betting on You, The Fake Out, and The Jigsaw Man. But hopefully I will get to read those soon, because The Jigsaw Man and Betting on You are on my 2025 TBR anyway, so they'll come back. We will see them at some point. And the other 2 are obviously going to be coming up in another video that you will see soon. And yeah, that's everything. What was your favourite read of the month of Jan? Let me know down below. What are you prioritising for the month of Feb? chat to me in the comments. Tell me if you loved any of these books. What was your thoughts on them? That's it from me for now, and I will see you guys in whatever comes next.